LoveLore Library. Chapter 1242, Luo Li and the Little Fox, for its breathing became faint as if it would disappear at any moment. Luo Li held the fox in her arms tightly, covering it with her small head. She was not crying. But the wind around her sounded like a low sob. Little fox, I'm sorry. She knew that her little fox was already weak from the beginning. There was nothing much it could do. However, the little fox had promised her that if it could transform into a human, it would come back and marry her. She had trusted it. Even if it took 100 years or 1,000 years for a fox to change into human form, she would wait. If it did not happen in this life, she would wait again in the next life. If they could not make it in the next life, she still had the next and the next. Manor Master, everyone turned to Luo Xiang, not knowing if they should continue beating her or not. Ever since Luo Fei was caught, Luo Xiang had become the head of the Luo family, replacing Luo Fei. Perhaps Luo Xiang still had a last shred of conscience. After seeing Luo Li, who had her head buried in the little fox's fur, he did not give any order to his men. He snorted as he waved his sleeves. Even if I don't kill this fox, it won't live much longer. As for Luo Li, I'll let her go if she promises to behave and never return to the Luo family again. He looked at Luo Li one last time before he turned around and calmly walked into Luo Manor. Liar, old lady Luo finally crawled up next to Luo Li. She pulled the young girl into her arms and cried loudly. What has our Luo family done? First came Qin Xiaoya, and now there are so many ungrateful men making my liar suffer so much. My old man, do you see this? This is the clan that you've helped back then. You've endangered yourself, stealing the secret treasure to help Luo Xiang break through to this strength. But he's treating your granddaughter like this, and he wants to drive me out of the Luo family. My old man, come back and take a look, and then take this crowd away. All of them. Oh my Li, me for extra chapters. Old lady Luo cried hard as she saw the wounds on Luo Li's body. She never thought that she would have to suffer like this again in her old age. Grandmother, will the little fox die? Luo Li raised her eyes and asked. Old lady Luo wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. If it was not for the fox just now, maybe Luo Li's injuries would have been worse. Let's go to Gu Manor. Master Gu is kind and won't ignore us. He might have a way to save the fox. All right. Luo Li was not crying anymore. She stood up and smiled sweetly as she stared at the little fox in her arms. I'll save you, little fox. I'll save you. She gently caressed the little fox and slowly raised her head. Suddenly, she was stunned. She saw a young girl who was approaching her not far away. The long sword in the young girl's hand was stained with blood. Her face was cold and solemn, and there was a pot above her head that was constantly spinning, making an uncomfortable buzzing sound. Along the way, Feng Ruqing had noticed a few holy warriors. They were clearly from the same group of people who were in Gu Manor just now. She also did not hesitate to slay them, leaving corpses everywhere. Suddenly, she stopped and looked blankly at Luo Li, who was holding a fox in front of her. Chapter 1243, A Girl Who Came in the Moonlight. Feng Ruqing's eyes narrowed when she glanced at Luo Li's scars. The atmosphere suddenly became extremely tense as a chilling murderous intent filled the air. The giant pot was too frightened to make any more buzzing noises. It timidly hid, wondering if it had done something wrong that had made its master so mad. Luo Li burst into tears and could not stop herself as if she had found her mainstay. She did not even notice that Feng Ruqing was already in front of her. A pair of tear-filled eyes gazed at her in a daze. Come with me. Feng Ruqing did not stop walking and walked right past Luo Li. Her face was expressionless, and her red dress was soaked with blood. The air became extremely cold as it swept over the girl's cheeks. Luoli held the little fox in her arms and followed right behind Feng-Ruching. She wanted to ask Feng-Ruching to save the little fox several times, but after seeing Feng-Ruching's cold demeanor, all her words were suddenly gone. But a few minutes later, a bottle was thrown into her arms, landing just above the little fox's head. The bottle was filled with spirit soup and was still warm because it had been stored in the medium. There was no decay on the bottle as all bottles used by Feng-Ruching were specially made. Luoli's heart was overjoyed as she twisted the lid off the bottle and fed all the spirit soup to the little fox. Only when she noticed that the little fox's breath had stabilized did her heart gradually calm down. When she came to her senses, she found that Feng-Ruching had already gone far away. She hurriedly chased after her. Xiao-Qing. Where are we going? Mu Manor. Feng-Ruching's eyes darkened as her voice turned cold. Luoli, where's your father? Where did he go when you were hurt like this? Luoli's eyes were dim as she pursed her lips together. He has been taken away by the Qin family. I don't know if he's still alive or not. Oh. Then did the Qin family hurt you? Luoli shook her head. No, it was my uncle who has taken my father's place. He kicked my grandmother and me out, and he is the one who has hurt me like this. The little fox almost lost its life when it tried to save me from him. The storm that surged around Feng-Ruching became more violent. Me for extra chapters. A cold glint flickered in her eyes and the murderous intent was as sharp as a sword. I've to go to Mu Manor first. Suyi is still waiting for me. After I've settled the Mu family's matter, I'll go back to the Luo family with you. But, Feng-Ruching's eyes narrowed. The storm around her grew more and more violent before finally exploding. Not far away, the Luo family's gate crashed down, bringing up a cloud of dust on the ground. Luoli was dumbfounded. She stared blankly at the crashed gate and turned to Feng-Ruching. The young girl waved her sleeve and left, leaving no trace behind. Luoli assisted the old lady to walk, following closely behind Feng-Ruching. Feng-Ruching looked back at Luoli. Why are you still following me? Luoli was speechless. She blinked and looked at Feng-Ruching helplessly. I've nowhere else to go. Old Lady Luo is getting old. Do you want her to run around with me? You two find Master Gu. He should be awake by now, and he can help you to save your father. I need to rush to Mu Manor. Chapter 1244. A girl who came in the moonlight. Feng-Ruching looked back at the damaged gate of the Luo family after saying those things. A cold ray of light flashed in her eyes. She then left without even looking back. The young girl holding the little fox stood a short distance away, staring dumbly at her back as she gradually disappeared. Somehow, her heart eased when she looked at the girl's figure. It felt as if, once she came back, everything would be fine. Grandmother, let's go find Master. Luoli looked again in the direction where Feng-Ruching had disappeared before slowly turning around. She assisted old Lady Luo and walked slowly to the chief manor. Mu Manor. Blood was splattered around the main gate. Qin Chen's face was also stained bright red with blood. He raised his hand to touch the blood on his face. The long sharp sword in his hand was shining brightly. The two advanced holy warriors could no longer stand by and wait. They rushed forward like lightning and were already in front of Qin Chen in an instant. Chainer. Nailin Yan was shocked. She sliced off the heads of the people in front of her with a sword and swiftly rushed toward Qin Chen. Who knew that the man was a step faster and had violently kicked Nailin Yan, hitting her squarely in the chest. Nailin Yan spurted out a mouthful of blood. Her face turned pale as she took a few steps back. Her hand held tightly her chest. Her face reflected discomfort. Yenner, are you all right? Feng Tianyu asked, looking worried. Nalan Yen shook his head. It's fine, don't worry about me. Protect Chainer. She already owed so much to Qin Qin. She must not let him suffer any more harm. The other advanced holy warriors in the sky rushed towards Sui. Mu Ling wanted to move forward without losing a moment, but his speed was not as fast as the White Phoenix's. The White Phoenix used its wings to protect Sui in its arms. It wrapped her body tightly around it and leaped into the air to dodge the strike. Mu Ling seemed somewhat embarrassed when he saw Sui in the protection of the White Phoenix. It was as if something that belonged to him had been taken away. Me for extra chapters. But he also knew that now was not the time for him to fight with the White Phoenix. Dealing with the people in front of him was the most important thing right now. The sky was dark. The raging murderous intent in the air was unabated. All the blood on the ground had dried up, and corpses were everywhere. There were no people in the streets. It was so quiet, only the sound of clashing swords could be heard. Suddenly, one of the holy warriors leaped in front of Nalan Yen and Feng Tianyu. His gaze was cold as if he was looking at two dead people. A small mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Before he could lift his sword, a huge shadow suddenly formed in the dark sky, covering his whole body. The holy warrior was shocked. When he looked up, he saw a huge pot on top of him, coming down on his body. The sounds of the fight stopped abruptly. Everyone stopped and gradually turned their heads. They only felt a coldness seeping into their hearts. Their bodies were so cold that they could not even move. Nalan Yen raised her head. Her gaze fell upon a familiar figure, revealing itself slowly in the moonlight. That person was dressed in red, exuding a domineering aura. It was as if time had stopped, and the whole world became silent. Qin Fei balled her hands into death grips. She shot a resentful and jealous gaze at the girl in moonlight, and even her breathing grew a little heavier. Chapter 1245, A Girl Who Came in the Moonlight 3 Feng Ruching. She's back. Qin Fei's eyes were filled with jealousy, anger, and hope. However, she did not see the familiar figure following behind Feng Ruching, and all her hope disappeared, leaving only hatred and bitterness. Perhaps even she did not understand why she was still expecting him to appear at a time like this. It was as if, no matter how much he hurt her, she always still held some hope for him. Qinger. Nalan Yen was overjoyed as she rushed toward Feng Ruching. Initially, Feng Ruching had come to find Sui and Qin Qin, but she was not expecting to meet Feng Tianyu and Nalan Yen here. She was suddenly furious. Her powerful energy surged up fiercely as her cold eyes fell upon the holy warrior in a green robe. The green-robed man was stunned. He looked at his companion who was crushed by the huge pot, not knowing whether he was still alive or not. He then stiffly raised his head and stared blankly at the voluptuous young girl who was dressed in red. You. Who are you? Feng Ruching glanced at him. Little pot, you tell him who I am. Boz. The huge pot moved violently, setting off a hurricane. Only then did the green-robed man notice that his companion's head was covered in blood and had been knocked into unconsciousness. Fortunately, he was advanced holy warrior. If it were anyone else, he would have been smashed into a meat pie. Even so, the green-robed man could sense the chill in the soles of his feet. His body was cold and trembling and he could not even move. The huge pot suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. The green-robed man only felt the blackness of the huge pot spatula frying his entire body as the pot threw him right into it with the lid in place. Everyone was confused. Qin Li became somewhat uneasy. He saw that no one had noticed him, so quietly tried to retreat. But as soon as he took a few steps back, a wall of flesh appeared behind him, blocking his path. He trembled and turned back, but Hai Rong was already standing behind him, looking at him coldly. It was just a misunderstanding, bang. Hai Rong grabbed Qin Li's clothes and threw him into the crowd, sneering. Master Mu, this guy wants to escape. Send someone to watch over him, and also these people of the Mu family who were clamoring just now, watch over all of them. None of them can escape me for extra chapters. What goes around comes around. These people were so arrogant before, but now they looked sadder than ever. Qinger, Nailan Yen grasped Feng Ruking's hand. I've found your brother. Qin Chen is your brother who has been missing for years. This answer was something that Feng Ruqing had already anticipated. But now, when she was hearing it from Nailan Yen, it gave her a feeling like she had regained something she had lost. Qin Chen was silent. The young man's eyes were still as clear as water, but there was an unintelligible emotion surging within them. Chainer. Feng Ruqing suddenly stepped forward and hugged Qin Chen tightly. This is really, really great, so, you really are my brother. A brother who shares the same bloodline as me. In the previous life, Feng Ruqing and Cheer had depended on each other, but they did not have any blood relationship, just two children brought together by a reorganized family. In this life, the person who gave her irreplaceable warmth was her own brother. The same blood flowed through their bodies. Qin Chen eventually raised his hand and gently patted the young girl's back. A smile of relief mixed with happiness filled his face. Chapter 1246, A Girl Who Came in the Moonlight, for they were siblings by blood. That was fine. Whoever he was, as long as he could accompany her, that was enough. Qin Feier's face was pale, her eyes teary. Her heart was filled with indescribable pain as she looked at the two people who were embracing each other. Suddenly, she laughed out loud as the tears kept falling. Her heart was unspeakably sad. Qin Chen, she's not your sister. You don't have a relative anymore, and you can't prove that she's your sibling. Indeed. She could not admit that her father had abducted Qin Chen. Would they still have to drip blood to identify their relatives? Ridiculous. A blood test may not be accurate either. Many powerful clans could check the bloodlines, but no one in this mundane world's palace would have such skill. Qinger, Sui wiped away the bloodstains on her face as she walked toward Feng Ruqing. Only then did Feng Ruqing notice Sui, who was severely wounded. Her eyes were darkened as she raised her hand and gently wiped away the bloodstains on Sui's face. Who did this? Her voice turned cold. Sui was stunned. She looked up at the huge pot in the sky. The one in the pot. Oh, Feng Ruqing calmly said, I'll give him to you for half a month, torture him as you wish. Initially, the White Phoenix was full of joy when it saw Feng Ruqing, but as soon as it heard her words, it became anxious. What's wrong with you sending an ugly man to Sui? Is he as pretty as me? Is he as lovely as me? Sui doesn't need him. Feng Ruqing was startled after hearing what the White Phoenix said. She gave it a once-over. I never knew that you have such evil intentions. Nan Xian has just taken a bottle of tears from you, and you want to be his father now. The White Phoenix was speechless. It was over. It would soon be doomed. Would Sui dislike it because it was a phoenix and never liked it again after discovering what it was thinking? But who knew that Sui only looked at the White Phoenix lightly? The White Phoenix is already so arrogant now. You want Nan Xian to call you father. I bet even if you called Nan Xian father, he would still slaughter you. The White Phoenix was speechless again. But somehow, it felt cornered. Me for extra chapters. It would definitely be nerve-wracking and scary if Sui knew what it was thinking. Fortunately, Sui did not think much about what Feng Ruqing had said just now. But the White Phoenix did not know why its heart felt a little disappointed. Xiao Qing, Sui calmly turned around. Just now, Qin Chen said, ahem. Qin Chen looked a little nervous and quickly cleared his throat. Sui gave him a baffled glance and continued, Qin Chen said that those people from the Qin family took him, ahem. Qin Chen suddenly coughed violently as he held his chest tightly. Feng Ruqing panicked, caressing Qin Chen's body nervously. Chainer, what's wrong? Where did you get hurt? I have some herbs with me. No, it's fine. Qin Chen smiled brightly. I was just slightly injured just now, but now I see you, I'm fine, really. No need to take medication. Oh, Feng Ruqing was relieved, but still not reassured. But fortunately, she did not ask any further questions, and Sui did not say anything more. Qin Chen's heart gradually calmed down. I've just remembered something. Naylan Yen lifted up her sword. Qin Feier, people said that the Qin family was kind enough to adopt Chainer, but I didn't expect you to have such sinister intentions, using Chainer's blood as a drug primer to cure your disease. Qin Chen was dumbstruck. Chapter 1247. He was not as discerning as his Sanai. He had concealed it for a long time, but it was eventually revealed. At this moment, Qin Chen realized the temperature around him had dropped quite a bit. He looked up somewhat nervously, gazing at Feng Ruqing. Xiao Qing, the young girl's face was expressionless. An intense storm was rolling in her dark eyes. Even if she did not say anything, Qin Chen could still feel the anger swarming out of her heart. Qin Chen, what did you promise me in the first place? Qin Chen remained silent. Looking at the young girl's expressionless face, Qin Chen could not help but panic. His mind was even more blank, and he did not have any time to think. So, he could only act like an obedient boy who had made a mistake, lowering his head and whispering quietly and apologetically, I was wrong. I have let you go because you promised me that you wouldn't let yourself get hurt anymore. If she had known that the Qin family had taken him away only to use his blood as a drug primer, she would not have let him leave, no matter what. She would have forced him to stay rather than let him suffer the pain again. Xiao Qing, I don't want to hear anything right now. If you want to explain, wait until this fight is over and explain everything to me. She did not say another word to Qin Chen and walked toward Qin Feier. A fierce storm was surging around her as her long hair swirled in the wind. Her eyes were fierce, making her look even more domineering. After seeing Feng Ruqing at this moment, fear gradually rose in Qin Feier's heart, and she could not help but step back. Her snow-white face turned paler, and her eyes were filled with alarm. Feng Ruqing suddenly raised her sword and slashed Qin Feier's arm. Blood flowed out from her torn shoulder, soaking her sleeve as her face became distorted with pain. You have used Chainer's blood as a drug primer. Then, his blood must be flowing in your body. I don't want my brother's blood to be tainted by you. He'll let you bleed as much as you've used his blood over the years. Qin Feier never thought that Feng Ruqing would act like this. She bit down on her lower lip without uttering a word. She was staring hard at Feng Ruqing with her angry eyes. The sword light flashed once more. Me for extra chapters. This time it landed directly on Qin Feier's chest. Blood instantly gushed out of her chest and stained her lapel red. Feier! A scream, hoarse and laced with pain, came from behind Qin Feier. Qin Feier clenched her fists. The pain in her heart was so excruciating that she was unable to catch her breath. The woman in front of her was her enemy. But she was defenseless in front of her enemy. Her dignity was trampled on by her enemy so hard that it made her heart shrink with pain and anguish. Until that familiar voice came from behind her. That was when she returned to her senses as she saw Lady Wenyu, squeezing through the crowds and rushing toward her. My Qin Feier! When Yu cried her heart out as she turned to Qin Chen angrily. You heartless one, why did you hurt my Feier? The one who has used your blood to save Qin Feier's life is the Qin family. What does it have to do with Qin Feier? And you? When Yu stared at Qin Li fiercely. Didn't you see how these people are hurting Feier? What are you standing there for? Why aren't you protecting Feier? Chapter 1248. He was not as discerning as his son Tu. Qin Li's face reflected discomfort. He snapped, I told you to stay in Qin Manor. What are you doing out here? When Yu was furious. You are asking me now. Didn't you say that Gu Shi is not going to make it, and you're still looking for someone to deal with him? Just now, Gu Shi brought that little girl from the Luo family to kill the Qin family. And he has released Luo Fei. Qin Li's lips trembled, and his pale face was pale. He had just been thinking that Feng Ruqing had a good relationship with the Luo family's little girl, and if he really could not escape this calamity, maybe he could even use Luo Fei as a threat. Ironically, when Yu came to tell him that not only Gu Shi was safe and sound, but Luo Fei had been rescued by him as well. Useless. In anger, Qin Li slapped Wen Ye's face so hard before turning his fierce gaze to Feng Ruqing. He gritted his teeth tightly. Feng Ruqing, Jia Axian has taken a fancy to my daughter, Qin Feier. He's just leaving to settle some matters. If you don't let us go, I'll hunt you down when he comes back. Feng Ruqing's long sword swung through the air and flew straight toward Qin Li. Her face cold and expressionless, and her pair of black eyes were calm without any slightest fluctuation of emotions. What Qin Li feared was the huge pot, not Feng Ruqing. Therefore, with a disdainful sneer, he lifted his long sword and blocked the fierce sword that was coming at him. Crack! A crisp sound echoed in the quiet night sky. The sword in Qin Li's hand had been broken into two. Feng Ruqing's sword came out of nowhere again and rushed toward him. Qin Li was shocked as he used his arm to block the attack. The sword's edge cut through his arm and blood spilled out everywhere. What made Qin Li panic even more than the wounds on his arms was the strength that Feng Ruqing had shown. Holy Warrior Tier. Nan Xian's woman had actually broken through to Holy Warrior Tier. That was a rank that he would never be able to reach in his lifetime. Qin Feier stumbled backward a few steps. Her heart ached with jealousy. Impossible. Holy Warrior Tier. How could Feng Ruqing reach Holy Warrior Tier? In this world, the only person who could make a breakthrough to Holy Warrior Tier at such a young age was Nan Xian. How did Feng Ruqing have such talent as well? Qin Feier bit hard her lower lips. Her shoulders were trembling. She was completely unable to raise her head at this moment. She, who had always been proud of herself, felt like a clown in front of Feng Ruqing. 1 year ago, she had naively thought that Nan Xian was also the type of person who loved beauty, and that was why he had fallen for a useless woman like Feng Ruqing, me for extra chapters. Suddenly, Qin Feier raised her head and sneered. No matter how strong Feng Ruqing was, she was still a vicious woman. Such a person would never ever be able to match her. When she thought about what Wen Yu had said to her back then, and the fact that Feng Ruqing could kill her servant because of a few verbal arguments, her heart was somewhat relieved. After all, she would never compare herself to evil people. That was an insult to her. Mu Ling stared dumbly at the young girl under the moonlight. The young girl was clad in magnificent attire. She was even more majestic than the night, so much so it made people's hearts tremble. Holy Warrior Tier. She had already made a breakthrough to Holy Warrior Tier before her 20th birthday. And yet, back then, he still wanted to split Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian up. Mu Ling looked at Chen Qingyan, who was sitting on the ground with a deathly pale face. He then turned to the stunningly beautiful Feng Ruching and laughed out loud. But his heart was filled with bitterness. For the first time, he admitted that he was not as discerning as his son. But the funny thing was, he only realized what he had done after it was too late. Chapter 1249, Mu Ling's Plea I, Who is Jia Axian? Feng Ruching turned to Sui and asked. Sui was startled. She did not know how to explain things that had happened to the dark dragon to Feng Ruching. The White Phoenix's voice suddenly came from beside her. Jia Axian seems to be quite strong, his rank should be higher than Holy Warrior tier. The two advanced Holy Warriors you have just dealt with just now are both his men. Oh yeah, Jia Axian attacked Big Black. To save the others' lives, Big Black has taken Jia Axian away from here. No one knows where they are. Somehow, the White Phoenix sounded a bit smug. Big Black was gone, so there would be no one left to steal Shao Qingqing from Nan Xian. Feng Ruching's aura became even more majestic. Qin Li, who was standing in front of her, could clearly feel her sudden aura. He was still unaware of what had happened when Feng Ruching had suddenly kicked him and sent him flying a few meters away before falling on the ground helplessly. Qin Li coughed. He was just about to stand up from the ground, but Feng Ruching was up upon him again when she kicked his waist. Qin Li felt that his old waist was about to break when he drew a painful breath. But before he could howl his anger, Feng Ruching quickly kicked his chest. The violent kick almost took his breath away. Who is Jia Axian? Qin Li was at the brink of spitting blood. Hasn't that question already been answered by that White Phoenix? Is this woman deaf? Bang! Feng Ruching immediately raised her leg and stomped on Qin Li's face. Her expressionless face made the people present a little scared. Especially after they had seen Qin Li unconscious with blood all over his face, they felt like the air around them had grown colder as they began to shiver uncontrollably. Qin Li was just too slow to answer. Did she need to be so cruel and vicious? As if she had not seen those frightened eyes, her figure flashed, and suddenly, she was already in front of Qin Feier. She grabbed Feier's lapels. Answer me, who is Jia Axian, me for extra chapters. Qin Feier bit her lower lip hard with a stubborn look on her pale face. 1 second passed. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. When Qin Feier saw Feng Ruching's palm almost striking her face, all her stubbornness disappeared in a flash. She replied in a resigned tone, I don't know anything about his background. It's Mu Huan who has brought him here. Feng Ruching loosened her grip and dropped Qin Feier. Qin Feier was just starting to catch her breath when a sword suddenly flashed, landing right on her wrist. Instantly, streams of blood started to gush out like spring water. As I said earlier, it'll make you bleed as much blood as you have taken from Chainer. The bleeding in other parts of the body is too easy to stop, so now I want your blood to flow a little longer. Her gaze swept across Qin Feier's face and slowly turned to Mu Huan. Mu Huan's face was pale. Losing Jia Axian was like losing a protective umbrella. There was nowhere for her to go to hide from the look in Feng Ruching's eyes. She slowly retreated backward. She clenched her fists tighter as panic engulfed her. Her heart jumped into her throat. Did you bring Jia Axian here? Mu Huan was silent. She did not say a single word and had no way to defend herself. Chapter 1250, Mu Ling's Plea 2. Feng Ruching walked toward Mu Huan slowly. Her red dress fluttered despite the absence of wind. Her face was expressionless. Was he the one who has taken away my big gray doggy? It's Big Black, not Big Gray Doggy. The White Phoenix corrected. Why can't you even remember your pet's name? Also, it was Big Black who took him away, not him. Enriching did not pay any attention to the white phoenix and continued, since Jia Axayan has wounded my big gray doggy and ran away, then the person who has brought him here will pay for it. Little pot, smash her. But don't kill her at once. The huge pot buzzed and spat out the green-robed man, spinning and flying toward Mu Huan before it smashed her down. It did not use too much force as it did not want to kill her. But to this huge pot that could smash a holy warrior into a meat pie, even if it used only the minimal force, it was not something that Mu Huan could withstand. Chen Qingyan looked, panicked, at the huge pot that was smashing itself into Mu Huan as her heart filled with anxiety. Huaner. Indeed. She loved her son, Mu Shi, more than anything. But Huaner was also her daughter. She was willing to let her daughter sacrifice herself, but no mother could stand by and watch her child die. Mu Shi was hiding in the shadows, trying to hide his presence for fear that he would be seen by Enriching. His eyes were continually scanning the surroundings to find a way to escape this place, ignoring Mu Huan, who was struggling under the huge pot's attack. Ah! Mu Huan's voice was torn by pain. She was running around as pain arced through her head. However, no matter how much she dodged, she could not run faster than the huge pot. Pain gripped Shin Qingjian's heart. She threw herself into Mu Ling's lap and cried, pouring her heart out. Brother Ling, I'm wrong, I know I'm wrong. I've made 1,000 mistakes, but that was all my own fault, please let Huaner go. Huaner, after all, it's your own blood. How could you bear to see her suffer such harm? Mu Ling clenched his fist tightly. Chen Qingyan was right, no matter what mistakes she had made, he could not change the fact that Mu Huan was his daughter. He hated Mu Huan for betraying him, and that she had almost destroyed the Mu family. But Mu Huan was his daughter. This child had made a huge mistake. He was angry and furious, and he would drive her out of the Mu family. The only thing he could not bear to do was to let her die, me for extra chapters. Sui, he turned his head, looking embarrassed, trying to get Sui to help him plead for mercy. As long as Sui spoke up, Enriching might let Mu Huan go. The white phoenix was furious and blocked Mu Ling's gaze by standing in front of Sui. She's your daughter, not Sui's. Chen Qingyan wanted to kill Nan Xian before, so Chen Qingyan is Sui's enemy. Why should she let her enemy's daughter go? Sui is kind, but not to all people. There's no mercy for a person like Chen Qingyan. If my other daughters were to offend Sui, then I would definitely. Yuck. I don't have any daughters. I wouldn't have any daughter with other people in this life, and am definitely not scum like you. Well, if it had a daughter, it would only be with Sui. It only liked Sui. The white phoenix looked at Sui, and when it saw that there was still no expression on her face, it was disappointed. It wanted Sui to understand its heart but was a little afraid that she would know. This feeling was too complicated. Mu Ling's face stiffened. He looked at Sui pleadingly. Chapter 1251, Mu Ling's plea 3. In this life, he had never bowed down to any woman before. But Sui is the only exception. Sui remained calm. She was as elegant as a chrysanthemum and as soft as the breeze. She ignored Mu Ling's words and did not even spare a glance at him. Sister Sui. Chen Qingyan panicked. She rushed towards Sui and kneeled, crying bitterly. Please plead for mercy on behalf of my daughter. All these mistakes were my own fault. She's still a child. A child. These two words finally made Sui's gaze fall upon Chen Qingyan. Her gaze was soft and calm. She then sneered. She is your child. What does your child have to do with me? Sister Sui. Are you really that heartless? If you don't pity me, please do it for Brother Ling's sake and beg for mercy on Huan Er's life. Chen Qingyan's face was covered in tears. But before she could finish speaking, Suyi was already holding her sword against her neck. The icy touch caused Chen Qingyan to shut her mouth, not daring to speak again. Her eyes were filled with grievance, resentment, and anger as if she was silently blaming them for their cruelty. The old master glanced at Chen Qingyan. Suyi's handling of a sword is quite clumsy and her hands are easy to tremble. If you bother her again, the unsteady sword on her hand might just cut you, but you shouldn't blame her. After all, Suyi is still a child. Chen Qingyan was dumbstruck. The Mu family members were all speechless. Suyi is a child. Her son was getting married soon, so why did the old master say that she was a child? How could the old master address her with such a shameless word? But this time, these people were smart enough not to argue with the old master anymore. They could still see the situation clearly. The Mu family was safe and sound. Enriching was so strong, and it was obvious that none of these people could attack the old master again. This was good, at least the Mu family was still in their hands, and they did not have to be controlled by the outsiders. Me for extra chapters. The night was like a black curtain. The crowd in Tianshan Manor was extremely quiet. Even when you had been frightened by Enriching's actions. She was dumbfounded and not daring to say another word. Qin Feier's face was pale, jealous, and resentful, but nothing she could do. She felt as if all the strength in her body had been drained away, and her whole body had become an empty shell. Qin Li gradually woke up. He raised his hand and slowly wiped the blood that covered his face. Then, he saw the man in a green robe standing motionless beside Enriching as if he was waiting for an opportunity to act. Chapter 1252, Mu Ling's plea for Enriching stroked her chin thoughtfully. Lord Holy Warrior. Qin Li called out again as he saw that the man in the green robe did not respond. Enriching frowned suddenly. He's too noisy. Swish. In an instant, the green-robed man had leaped in front of Qin Li and fiercely raised his hand, strangling Qin Li's neck. The whole street was quiet. Whether it was the clans behind Qin Li or the Mu family's hypocrites, they were all stunned, as if they had lost their senses. The green-robed man was so arrogant and overbearing before, how could he have become so obedient to Enriching now? No one understood what was happening. Even Nailan Yan and the others were a bit startled. Suddenly, a chill ran through their bodies, making their hearts tremble, as they turned to the huge pot that was happily chasing after Mu Huan. Without waiting for Enriching to say any more, they all understood that the huge pot must have done something to the green-robed man that caused him to become so obedient. Don't kill him. I have things to ask him. Enriching commanded in a cold voice. Yes, master. The green-robed man's tone was respectful, truly like a slave, not even daring to show any disrespect on his face. The others were stunned with disbelief as they stared blankly at Enriching. Master. She has become his master. Qing'er. What has your pot done to him? How did he turn out like this? Nailan Yan had spoken out the doubts in everyone's heart. Suddenly, all eyes were turned upon Enriching, waiting for her answer. Enriching shrugged. I don't know. Well, it was true that she did not know anything. But everyone who had been disciplined by Little Pot would become so well-behaved and obedient. Qin Li was so choked up he could not speak. His eyes were bloodshot and bulging. He had a more heartfelt horror than just the panic on his face. Me for extra chapters. He was wrong. Wrong. This woman, Enriching, was a devil. If he could have another chance, he would never fight against the devil again. When you screamed and rushed toward the green-robed man. Let him go, let him go. Bang! Without hesitation, the green-robed man kicked Wen Yu, sending her flying to the ground. Wen Yu spurted out a mouthful of blood. She stared at the green-robed man and hissed. "Let go of my husband. This is all Mu Huan's fault. She's the one who has made my husband trouble the Mu family, so she can act like a good person and make Mu Ling regret it. It's also Mu Huan, who wants to be the chief of Tianshan Manor, and she has asked my husband to kill Sui. She did it all. Go and deal with her, not us. We're innocent." Wen Ye's voice was a bit hoarse as she shouted these last words. Her body was trembling, and her snow-white face panicked. Mu Ling's body stiffened, staring at Mu Huan in disbelief. He had always thought that Mu Huan was just ignorant and mischievous. She was not a bad person. She just wanted to prove herself, that was why she had made so many mistakes. But now, when Yu was telling him that Mu Huan wanted to kill Sui, Mu Ling suddenly understood a lot of things. He realized that he had missed too much in these years. Mu Ling squatted down in pain. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have pleaded for Mu Huan." He was filled with regret, sadness, and guilt. "Father, Sui, I was wrong." Chapter 1253, Mu Ling's plea v. This was the first time that Mu Ling had admitted his mistake. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Her broken heart had already been riddled with hundreds of holes. It was not easy to fix it, so naturally, she would not allow anyone to hurt her heart again. The storm of war had cleared. Dawn was approaching, and the fish-belly white of early dawn gradually appeared, dispelling the haze in the sky. "Yenner, it's over." Feng Tianyu held Nalan Yan's hand and said in a warm voice. Initially, they had thought that they would die at this time. But now, it was all over. Their daughter had become a great and powerful woman, sufficient to make them rejoice. However, no matter how excellent or strong his daughter was, she would still be the one who needed to rely on him. As it was before. Qin Feier's knees fell to the ground, her body somewhat limp, and she suddenly laughed out. "Feng Riching, even if you're strong, you're still a demon. Nan Xian is not mine, so I don't blame you for stealing him away from me, but you shouldn't. You shouldn't have killed my servant only because of a quarrel. She's innocent." Feng Riking's eyes shifted and seemed to register no memory. "Your servant?" "Yes, she followed me to the Mu family that day. She had protected me after I fainted, and you have killed her due to a few arguments. A demon like you will be punished sooner or later." Qin Feier raised her hate-filled eyes, staring hard at Feng Ruqing. She did not see that when she said these words, Wen Ye's body stiffened. Oh, Feng Ruqing just realized. She was indeed beaten by me and thrown out by Nan Xian. But how? She's dead. Stop pretending. You've killed her. Qin Feier's eyes were filled with hatred. She gritted her teeth and said, "So, I actually don't understand what Nan Xian sees in you." Indeed. Feng Ruqing was not as kind or as gentle as Qin Feier. Me for extra chapters. Why did Nan Xian liked her? Well, because Nan Xian is even more vicious than me. Feng Ruqing smiled as she walked toward Qin Feier. You said I've killed your servant. That is not vicious enough. Instead of killing a servant, what about I kill you first, a woman who is snooping around my state preceptor, so it's easier for me to become notorious, right? Then, no one will dare to even steal a glance at my state preceptor anymore. Qin Feier sneered. She then turned to Sui again and smiled mockingly. Feng Ruqing was lucky enough to have a mother-in-law like Sui. After all, both of them were the same kind of person. If it were anyone else, no one could accept a vicious woman without a tolerant heart like her. My mother said that it was you who killed my servant. She grew up with me since she was a child, and I love her like a sister. You've killed her, shouldn't I get my revenge? That, one person among the crowd weakly raised his hand. Feng-Ruching turned to look, and that person was a man about the same age as Nan Xian. Bashfulness was obvious on his face and he seemed quite shy when he saw that Feng-Ruching was looking at him. I saw a little girl dragged out of Qin Manor by Lady Qin. Back then, that girl was still breathing, but Lady Qin ordered her men to bury her alive. Initially, I thought it was a servant who had made a mistake in the Qin family. If your Qin family hadn't had any servant executed in the past year, it should be your personal servant whom you love like a sister. Feng-Ruching did not know this young man, but Suyi was very familiar with him, as he was one of the orphans she had adopted back then. After she left the Mu family, the old butler had sent these children to live outside the manor. Chapter 1254. Someone from Divine Herb's sect came. Qin Feier was startled and looked at Wen Yu in disbelief. She was not a fool either, and after looking at the flash of panic on Wen Ye's face, her heart felt like it had been stabbed. Mother, were you lying to me? Feier, listen to me, Wen Yu panicked. All that she wanted to explain were cut off after seeing the resentment in Qin Feier's face. The words were stuck in her throat. Why did you lie to me? Why? Qin Feier questioned painfully. Her tears were streaming down her face as her eyes were filled with anger. Luer and her were like sisters. She was naturally sad about Liu's death. But perhaps she had not realized that she hated Wen Yu only because Wen Yu had caused her to have one less reason to hate Feng-Ruching. All this while, she had always placed herself on the opposite side of Feng-Ruching. She had always believed that Nan Xian was just a person who liked beauty, as he had fallen in love with Feng-Ruching even though she was so cruel and vicious. Now, the funny thing was that someone had just told her that her maid, Luer, had been killed by her mother. And she was buried alive by her own mother. Feier, listen to me, you shut up, shut up. I hate you, it's all your fault, all your fault. Qin Feier held her head and curled into a ball. Her eyes were filled with hatred that sunk deep into the marrow of her bones. Like a sharp sword, it pierced through Wen Ye's heart. In a moment, her heart was bloodied and torn with pain. All these years, everything she had done was for Feier, but in the end, Feier hated her so much. Was she wrong? No. She was not wrong. She was just doing the best for her daughter. What was wrong with that? Wen Ye's eyes showed confusion as she stared blankly at the hysterical young girl. Me for extra chapters. The blood on the young girl's wrist had dried. She lowered her arm and raised her pale face, staring at Wen Yu with a bone-chilling hatred. You don't deserve to be my mother. Such a selfish woman had no right to be her mother. Wen Ye's body stiffened. She tried to hold Qin Feier's arm, but Qin Feier dodged, leaving her hand frozen in midair. The whole street was quiet. Quiet enough to hear a pin drop. Only the corpses on the ground were proof of the war that had taken place. Feng-Ruching did not want to give these people another chance. She held her sword in her hand and slowly walked toward Wen Yu. Wen Yu sensed her approaching breath and quickly returned to her senses. She sneered as she turned to Feng-Ruching. Feng-Ruching, Qin Chen isn't your brother. He's just an ungrateful kid that our Qin family has rescued. Yet, you're so concerned about him. It seems like you didn't like it for him to be called an ungrateful kid, right? Up until now, all of the people in the Qin family did not acknowledge Qin Chen's origins. As expected, after hearing Wen Ye's words, Feng-Ruching stopped walking and gazed at her thoughtfully. Wen Yu felt relieved, but her face did not show it at all. I'm not begging you to let the Qin family go. I only want you to let Feier go. She doesn't know anything. She's innocent. If you let Fei go, I'm willing to declare Qin Chen's identity to the world and put all the blame on the Qin family to clear Qin Chen's name. Chapter 1255. Someone from the Divine Herbs sect came too. It was the only thing she could do for Fei. When you... Qin Li coughed out a mouthful of blood as his face reflected discomfort. You shut up. Wen Yu snapped in a stern voice. What right do you have to talk too much here? If you can't even protect your daughter, what use is there for you to be the head of the Qin family? Feng Ruqing did somewhat appreciate Wen Yu, at least compared to Qin Li's selfishness. Wen Yu did love Qin Fei even if she had used the wrong way to show it. Feng Ruqing raised her hand and a sword suddenly appeared in her palm. It flew through the air and landed on Wen Ye's arm. Blood flowed from her arm. She bit her lower lip from the pain. Her already pale face was bloodless now. Mother! Qin Fei's face changed drastically as her heart almost stopped beating. Although she hated Wen Yu was still her mother after all. How could she be unconcerned with her mother, who was being hurt like this? However, Feng Ruqing was about to make another move when powerful energy suddenly came swiftly from the sky. The huge pot was the first to notice this sudden energy. It stopped tossing Mu Huan and fiercely rushed forward, putting itself in front of Feng Ruqing. In that instant, all the energy fell on top of the huge pot and was absorbed entirely by the huge pot. Qing'er! Nailin Yan's heart was so scared that it almost stopped beating. Fortunately, Feng Ruqing was safe and sound, which had made her heart eased. But her hand was gripping Feng Ruqing's arm tightly, unwilling to let go. Under the morning light, there stood a young man in a navy blue robe. This young man looked somewhat young but was actually not. His gaze was insufferably arrogant. But all of the arrogance disappeared after he saw an advanced holy warrior standing next to Feng Ruqing. Wait! Didn't the sect master say that Tianshan Manor is in crisis now, so the Divine Herbs sect want to collect a slice of the cake from them? The sect master was very interested in the Qin family's manor lady who had suddenly made a breakthrough to advanced holy warrior tier and planned to bring her back. Me for extra chapters. But who could tell him why there were so many advanced holy warriors in Tianshan Manor? There was also a pot that could absorb his spiritual qi. At this moment, the young man saw a girl dressed in red, standing under the pot, her head raised. Her gaze was faint, but it gave a sense of compulsion. This is just a misunderstanding. The young man wiped the sweat on his forehead and laughed. I was passing by, really, I just passed by here to take a look. I didn't want to do anything just now. It was my spiritual qi that has automatically flowed out without my control. Well, everything he said was so honest, these people would believe it, right? Greeny. Feng Ruqing faintly called out. Everyone looked at each other, and no one knew whom she was calling. Until the green-robed holy warrior opened his mouth. Master, my name is Wu Yu, not Greeny. Everyone was embarrassed. You can't call someone green just because they're wearing a green robe. Can't you just ask them if you don't know their name? Oh, Feng Ruqing was expressionless. Settle that one. Yes, master. The young man in a dark blue robe was pale with fear. I'm just an innocent passerby passing through here. I don't want to get involved in your fight. I'll leave now, alright. What had he done just now? Why did he make the first move without seeing who he was going to attack? If the sect master had not asked him to take the Qin family's Qin Fei back, he would not have to attack Feng Ruqing. Chapter 1256. Someone from the Divine Herbs sect came. Feng Ruqing did not say anything as she gave the young man a once-over expressionlessly. The young man was uncomfortable. If it was not for fear of Wu Ye's strength, he might have turned around and left this place as fast as possible. Are you from the Divine Herbs sect? An old voice suddenly spoke from within the crowd. This voice was like a thunderbolt from the clear sky, almost causing the young man's heart to stop beating. He was clearly embarrassed as he looked at the old master who had just spoken and accosted him. Old master, I think you've mistaken me for someone else. Oh, the old master pointed at something on the young man's chest. You have the words Divine Herbs sect written on your robe, and I still don't think anyone will be so bold to impersonate someone from the Divine Herbs sect. The young man lowered his neck stiffly, only then did he clearly see those words on his robe, and he suddenly felt like crying. The people in the Divine Herbs sect were so narcissistic that even the Divine Herbs sect name had to be put on his robes. He was so panicked just now that he had forgotten about something. His name. He would tell them after they had calmed down. He. The people of the Divine Herbs sect would not only be passing by. They would not come to Tianshan Manor if they wanted nothing. Wu Yu. Feng Ruqing looked cold. Bring him to me. Yes. Wu Yu cupped his fist as he responded respectfully. The crowd was in disbelief as they looked at Wu Yu, who was a respectable figure before. He was so different from the arrogant green-robe man he was before. This transformation. It was too fast that it took people by surprise. The young man's face changed slightly as he looked at Wu Yu, who was swiftly approaching him. He took a few steps backward, and there was a hint of a struggle flickering in his eyes. In the end, he quietly took out a transparent pearl. This was something that the sect master had given him before he left. It could instantly bring the disciples back to the Divine Herbs sect. Of course, not everyone could possess the pearl, but only those with extremely high status within the Divine Herbs sect were eligible to receive the pearl. Me for extra chapters. After all, to the Divine Herbs sect, the pearl was a life-saving weapon that was better than any treasure. The young man slowly closed his eyes and opened them abruptly. He fiercely threw the pearl at Qin Feier and struck a spiritual qi, forcing it toward the transparent pearl. Snap! The pearl burst open on top of Qin Feier's head. In an instant, her body was surrounded by a burst of light, which then became more and more transparent until she vanished before everyone's eyes. Indeed, Qin Feier had disappeared in front of everyone. The young man was quietly relieved. The purpose of his visit was to get the share back and bring back Qin Feier. The sect master had given him the pearl because he was afraid that Qin Feier was too strong for him to handle. If he had the pearl, he could quickly bring Qin Feier to the Divine Herbs sect. Now, it seemed that these people had suppressed Qin Feier, otherwise, she would not be in such a mess. It was really a pity about the pearl. The young man was a little distressed, but if he could not complete his mission, the sect master would surely punish him as well. So, he might as well give it a try. Feng Ruqing calmly looked in the direction in which Qin Feier had disappeared. Her dark eyes were as calm as ever, and she did not seem surprised by it. The Divine Herbs sect came for Qin Feier only. After a long while, Feng Ruqing withdrew her gaze and turned to the young man. The young man smiled coldly. Since all of you recognize my identity, I will not hide it anymore. Yes, my sect master is interested in Qin Feier because she's weak but can still make a breakthrough to advanced holy warrior tier. I was asked to come and take her away. Chapter 1257, The Tragic Divine Herbs Sect's Skilled Master. Well, Feng Ruqing smiled faintly. Initially, I hadn't thought of going to the Divine Herbs sect. But since you've taken Qin Feier away, then I'll go there myself, and as for now, the young man panicked, but he tried not to show it on his face. He gritted his teeth hard. Now, what do you want to do? You let Qin Feier go, so you have to stay. Buzz! The huge pot was so excited that the young man could feel the pot salivating, wanting to rush down and swallow him. I am from the Divine Herbs sect. The young man panicked and took a few steps back. Before he could even find a chance to escape, Wu Yu was already behind him, making it impossible for him to leave. The crowds were also startled. Feng Ruking's possessed man was advanced holy warrior, but the Divine Herbs sect was able to remain in the mainland for so many years. It showed that their people must be strong too. If Feng Ruqing fought against the Divine Herbs sect, it would not end well. However, the crowd fell silent again after they saw the huge pot hovering above Feng Ruking's head. No one knew what level of strength this pot was at, but as it was able to make an advanced holy warrior bow to Feng Ruqing, it must have a power that was beyond the world's imagination. In that case, perhaps Feng Ruqing would still have a chance to fight with the Divine Herbs sect. Little pot, cripple him. Feng Ruqing glanced at the young man's face expressionlessly. The huge pot buzzed as if it was somewhat puzzled. Master did not want to turn this human into a slave. I have no shortage of fighters right now, but my mother's Fengyun manor should be short of a latrine cleaner. So, you cripple one of his arms and throw him to Fengyun manor to clean the latrines. Everyone could not help but inhale sharply. This young man was not as strong as Wu Yu, but at least he was a holy warrior, making a holy warrior clean the latrine. It was such a waste. It was such a waste. Me for extra chapters. The old Master Mu's eyes twitched as he stared at Feng Ruqing sadly. You don't lack fighters, but I do. If you don't need them, you can give them to me. He's a holy warrior, and his rank in the Divine Herbs sect doesn't seem low. Yet, you're asking him to clean the latrines. Chinger, there's no shortage of people to clean the latrines in Fengyun Manor. Nailin Yen smiled sweetly. The young man was just starting to catch his breath when Nailin Yen spoke again. But General Manor should be short of a latrine cleaner. What about this? You send him to your grandfather at General Manor and let your grandfather set him up. As Nailin Yen had said so, Feng Ruqing was not forcing him to be thrown to Fengyun Manor again. She stroked her chin as she smiled. Mother is right, it's best to have grandfather settle him. After all, he is a holy warrior. Besides cleaning the latrines, he can also train generals for our Nailin family. The iron-blooded troop also needs someone like him. It was hard to get a holy warrior's skilled master that could do more work, so she would use him to his bones. The young man was chilled to the bones as he listened to these people's words. He suddenly felt like he was in the middle of hell. Sect Master, these people are so scary, I want to go home. No matter how hard the young man cried, these people in front of him did not feel the slightest pity for him. Chapter 1258, The Tragic Divine Herbs Sect's Skilled Master too. They all looked at him with those greedy eyes, as if they wanted to squeeze every last bit of his value out of him. A cold wind blew in the sky. The streets had quieted down, and the storm of war had long dissipated like clouds. Feng Ruqing raised her eyes and looked at the crowd behind Qin Li with a cold smile. Qin Li's knees weakened and fell to the ground. He looked defeated as his eyes were sunken and dark. He had lost. In the end, he had still lost. Ha ha ha. Losing so miserably, and there was no turning back. Maiden Ruqing. The clans that followed Qin Li panicked and hurriedly kneeled in front of Feng Ruqing. Their voices earnest and pleading as they said, the Qin family forced us to do this. The other clans who disobeyed his orders have been destroyed, and the Zhuge family is one of them. Qin Li has sold Zhuge Jia, the daughter of the Zhuge family, to a brothel. Zhuge Jia. Feng Ruqing felt that this name was somewhat familiar, as if she had heard it somewhere. Suddenly, a clear and shy voice spoke in her mind, as if it had happened yesterday. Maiden Feng, I am Zhuge Jia of the Zhuge family. I saw you at the evening feast, and I can't forget you since then. You're more handsome than any other man in the world. Later, I understand that women are better than men. Maiden Feng, please keep me with you. Zhuge Jia, the shy and lovely girl who wanted to be with Feng Ruqing. Was she sold by Qin Li to a brothel? To Feng Ruqing, there were only two kinds of women, cute and pleasing, like Tang Yin and Gu Yi, the people of iron-blooded troop, and these girls who surrounded her in Tianshan Manor. The other kind of women was like Qin Fei, who she could never like. That woman had even peeped at her state preceptor. In comparison, the girl named Zhuge Jia was really likable, even though Feng Ruqing did not have much contact with her. Such a lovely little girl was sold to a brothel. Feng Ruqing frowned abruptly. Which brothel? Me for extra chapters. Welcome Spring Courtyard and the pimp is Qin Li's old lover. As soon as this was mentioned, everyone looked at Qin Li in disbelief. The pimp of a brothel was Qin Li's old lover. When Yu was still grieving and had not returned to her senses. Previously, she would have definitely jumped over and scratched all over Qin Li's face, leaving bloody marks. Wu Yu, Feng Ruqing said coldly, you go and destroy the Welcome Spring Courtyard. Arrest those who are forcing the good girls to work in the brothel and send them to Gushi. She would not look down on the girls in the brothel, nor would she look down on those who sold themselves for money because many of them did not have other choices to support their lives. So, the only people she wanted to wipe out were those who forced the good girls into prostitution. If those girls had volunteered, she would not have been able to say much, but if they had been forced, this Welcome Spring Courtyard should indeed be destroyed. Yes, Master, Wu Yu answered respectfully. The crowd present was somewhat speechless. You're just ending a brothel, do you really have to send an advanced holy warrior to do it? If you simply choose one person from the Mu family, it's enough to wipe out the whole Welcome Spring Courtyard. After giving her orders, Feng Ruqing looked at the group of people kneeling in front of her. These people were all trembling. They knew that the Qin family was defeated, and if they wanted to live, they had to bow down to Feng Ruqing. Chapter 1259. The truth. Feng Ruqing's gaze fell on the people in front of him. These people were all frozen. They lowered their heads in fear as they tried to minimize their presence. Old Master, what do you want to do with these people? Feng Ruqing smiled as she turned to the Old Master Mu. These were Tianshan Manor's people, after all. It would be better if they took care of it. I will tie them all up and send them to the Chief Master. With one hand behind his back, the Old Master Mu looked at these people kneeling in front of him with his sharp, cold eyes. As for the Qin family, they are one of the culprits and deserve to be executed on the spot, but for the sake of the four families of Tianshan Manor, I will let the Qin family live for a few more days. The Old Master Mu paused. So, hang these two on the city gate and roast them to death with a blazing fire. Qin Li's legs weakened as he fell to the ground. The Old Master Mu was too cruel. It would be better and easier to just finish him off. Qin Li, the Old Master Mu walked slowly toward Qin Li. His face looked cold as he asked, tell me, is Qin Chen Shao Qing's younger brother? If you tell me, I'll give you a good thrashing. Qin Li frowned. He stared at Qin Chen for a few moments and suddenly laughed out loud. Ha ha ha. Qin Chen is the one that I've saved from someone else, not Feng Tianyu's child. I saved his life, but he is doing this to me. Even if I die, I'll curse him for the rest of his life. Up until now, Qin Li still refused to acknowledge Qin Chen's origins. He smiled mockingly, and his eyes were full of anger and contempt. Indeed, he would never make it easy for these people even if he died. Besides the people of Tianshan Manor, the Divine Herbs sect and Deities Gate all knew that he, Qin Li, had saved an orphan. But the orphan had bit the hand that fed him and wanted to kill his adopted parents. Even the kindest people would never let Qin Chen live a good life. Even if they could not harm Qin Chen, they could still make him suffer from the curses for the rest of his life. So what if I even made Qin Chen sacrifice his blood? He's not going to die just from giving some blood. I am his savior, and those righteous people in this world will definitely seek justice for my Qin family. Ha ha ha. Feng Ruqing kicked him hard. Qin Li suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood. His face turned pale, paralyzed. He had just suffered a severe injury from Wu Ye's attack, so he was unable to withstand Feng Ruqing's kick, and was too weak to speak anymore. Me for extra chapters. I think hanging you on the city gate and roasting you to death is too easy. The chief master should have set up a penal code. Old Master Mu, send him to the chief manor. I will not allow him to die until the last drop of his blood is drained, and the last piece of his skin is peeled off. The young girl was stunning and domineering. She was beautiful and unrestrained, like an emperor looking down on the world he ruled. Qin Li's face was pale, but he still smiled stubbornly and chuckled. Feng Ruqing pulled Qin Li up and dumped him in front of the old Master Mu. She then turned her gaze to Wen Yu. Wen Yu was already scared silly. Or perhaps it was because her daughter had escaped, so she had started to think about saving herself. As Feng Ruqing approached her, Wen Yu's legs became weak. She almost fell to the ground. Somehow, she always had the feeling of being overpowered by the young girl's fierce gaze. I've told you that. Wen Yu was trembling as she said, my daughter's health has been bad since she was young. And there was a master. Chapter 1260, The Truth Too. Wen Yu, shut up. Qin Li's eyes were red as he gathered all his strength and roared. His body trembled with anger. Feng Ruqing did not hesitate to step on Qin Li's mouth when she turned to Wen Yu. If you don't want to suffer like this, then you should tell me everything. Wen Yu trembled harder. Death was not terrifying, what was terrifying was living a life that was worse than death. Wen Yu hated Feng Ruqing so much, but she did not dare to go against her at a time like this. Wen Yu knew Feng Ruqing would do as she had said. I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything. It was a fortune teller who told us that there was a newborn baby in the eastern part of Luyun Kingdom that could save my daughter in the future back then. Qin Li had sent someone to that place and taken Qin Chen away. Qin Chen's blood is special and suitable to be a drug primer. He is a supreme treasure that can save lives, so that's why we took Qin Chen away. Feng Ruqing fiercely kicked Wen Yu and flipped her over. Wen Yu was in pain that her eyes were almost popping out. Her face turned paler as she coughed hard. I've already told you everything. What more do you want? Feng Ruqing sneered. You talk too much. In an instant, Wen Yu's entire face lost its color, her lips trembled as she could not say a word. Indeed, she had mentioned all of these to let people know how useful Qin Chen was, so anyone would surely come to take him away in the future anyway. But she did not expect that Feng Ruqing would immediately discover her plan. The old Master Mu walked toward Wen Yu, expressionlessly. Even if Qin Chen's blood is special, it can only alleviate the condition, not cure it. Otherwise, why hasn't your daughter's illness been cured after so many years? Wen Yu's lips trembled, unable to say a word. Anne. My situation is worse than your daughter's. At least your daughter is just weak and sickly, but I almost died, and had even lost all of my strength, me for extra chapters. This was the first time that old Master Mu admitted about what happened to the strength that he had once lost in front of these people. Wen Yu was somewhat puzzled as she stared at the old Master Mu. The old Master Mu smiled coldly. But now, I have recovered. I have gotten my strength back, and even more, I could make a breakthrough. Do you know why? Wen Yu was stunned, unable to say a word. Because, the old Master Mu paused for a moment. Because of Feng Ruqing. Indeed. It was because of his granddaughter-in-law that his grandson had found. She saved not only him, but also the Mu family. She was the Mu family's savior. Wen Yu was even more puzzled, not quite understanding what the old Master Mu meant by that. Oh, right, you should know that Qin Qin. No, Feng Qin and Xiao Qing were twins. They were born on the same day, at the same time, in the same place, even. The same household. Wen Ye's body stiffened as she stared at the old Master Mu in shock. Initially, she had thought that the person that the old master was referring to was Qin Qin. It was because the Qin family knew his special bloodline since the first time they saw him. When he was born, his blood was sweet and carried the herb scent, making him the most suitable drug primer. After bringing him back to the Qin family, they had used some methods to cover up the scent of his bloodline completely, but his blood was still equally effective in saving lives and curing diseases. Chapter 1261, The Truth 3. Therefore, when you had never thought of Feng Ruqing. Impossible, that's impossible. Wen Yu shook her head vigorously as her eyes were filled with pain and sorrow. I don't believe it. I don't believe what all of you are saying. The Grand Master meant Qin Qin, it definitely was him. Old Master Mu looked at Wen Yu, who was being so stubborn, and sneered. Then, was Qin Feier's disease cured by Qin Qin? Wen Yu could not say a word. The sorrow and pain on her face had already answered the question on her behalf. Indeed, if Qin Qin was the life-saving medicine that the Grand Master was talking about, then why was it that Feier disease kept returning and isn't completely cured of the illness after all these years? It is because there is just no way to completely cure it. If it was Feng Ruqing. If she could even cure the old master's disease, perhaps she could even cure Feier. At that moment, Wen Ye's face was as white as ash as she sat on the ground in a daze, unable to regain her senses for a long while. She only started crying pitifully in sorrow and pain after a while. Feier, I'm sorry. It is I who is sorry toward you. Although her Feier was sick, she had been so kind nonetheless, but why did she have to meet such an end in the end? Good thing the people from Divine Herb's sect had brought her away. She did not know why exactly the Divine Herb's sect had brought Feier away, but no matter what, it was better than falling into Feng Ruqing's hands. As such, she was also assured. A cool, breezy voice tinged with mockery rang from behind her. Back then, I had originally thought that your Qin family had really kindly saved a child. I never thought there was such a story behind it. Your Qin family has really hidden your skeletons too well. A path opened as the crowd parted. Everyone raised their heads to see who it was, and saw Gu Shi approaching in big strides. Behind him was a group of family clan heads. For so many years in Tianshan Manor, it was not that Gu Shi did not expand his own powers, but when the battle started, all the family clans that had followed him were being controlled, so much so that they were not even able to step out of their doors. He was only able to bring them out after he had recovered. Everyone looked at the Qin family's group of people with disdain and ridicule. Me for extra chapters. It seemed that nobody had ever thought that Qin Qin was a child the Qin family had stolen. Before this, I had always thought that the Qin family were kind-hearted. Be it Qin Feier or Qin Li. I never thought that Qin Feier was so vicious, and furthermore, I would never have guessed that Qin Li is such an ambitious man. This pair of father and daughter had really hidden too well. Perhaps Qin Feier had indeed once been kind, but her kindness contained a trace of selfishness, and it was merely to protect her image and reputation on the outside. Qin Li was also a good old person. He was as gentle as jade, indifferent toward fame and fortune, and had even saved an orphan. However, today, it was revealed that Qin Li had actually stolen this orphan from the arms of another parent to save Qin Fei's life. He had thus caused an entire family to be separated for so many years. Not only did these people steal Qin Chen, but they had also treated him badly, and had even made up a lie saying that they had saved his life. After Qin Chen had served in the Qin family for so many years, he had to bear the scolding of being called a white-eyed wolf one. Hilarious. Too ridiculous. From the beginning to the end, Qin Chen only had a cold expression. His eyes were clear and did not contain any hint of surprise. No one was able to detect his emotions. However, he simply stood by Feng Ruking's side and did not take a single step away. Just like a bodyguard, carefully protecting her. Even if he was really saved by the Qin family, he had long repaid their favor after all those years. When he had first returned to the Qin family, it was merely for Shao Qing's sake. That was it. Besides, he was actually stolen from his very own family. One white-eyed wolf means an ungrateful person. Chapter 1262. The truth. For the young man looked at Feng Ruqing with his clear eyes. His eyes were as brilliant as the sun, giving off a warm fuzzy light. Shao Qing, when will we go back home? Shao Qing, when will we go back home? The young man's warm voice also softened Feng Ruking's heart. She turned around to look at him and said, when Nan Xian returns, we will go back together. All right. His voice was still as clear as a natural spring, pure and sweet. It was as if the young man had such a look only when Feng Ruqing was around. Even the pink scar at the corner of his brow seemed to be especially good-looking. Manor Master Gu, these people will be handed over to you to be dealt with. Old Master Mu cupped his fist. I still need to clean up my own family's mess today, so I will take my leave first. My two in-laws, Sui, Shao Qing, Shao Qin, let's go back first. When the old master was saying these words, his gaze was sharp like a blade, scaring the clansmen of the Mu family until they shivered. Even merely standing around left them feeling uncomfortable. Master, we were also forced to do so back then. We had to do it to protect the Mu family. You need to trust our well-meaning intentions. Mu Ying knelt down first, speaking in great distress. Everything he had done was for the Mu family. Even if he had done wrong, it was worth forgiving. Old Master Mu glanced coldly at the old man who was kneeling at the forefront and said expressionlessly, our Mu family does not need someone who does not obey my orders, makes his own decisions, and is, even more so, afraid of death. Mu Ying trembled and stopped talking. The other people also lowered their heads, not daring to say more. However, considering that all of you are part of my Mu family's clan, I will not deal with all of you. All you should leave the Mu family. From now on, all of you are no longer the people of my Mu family. Your life and death will not be related to me. All of the Mu family's people trembled as they raised their heads to look at old Master Mu nervously. As part of the Mu family, normally they had done quite a bit of showing off and domination outside. They had offended quite a number of people in the past years. However, since those people were afraid of the Mu family, nobody had dared to settle scores with them. If they lost the protection of the Mu family, their endings were pretty predictable. Therefore, when they heard the old master's words, all these people started panicking. One of them pounced on old Master Mu and held onto his old thigh as he cried loudly with snot dripping out of his nose. Master, I have done wrong. I know my mistakes. Please, I beg you, do not chase me out. I really know my mistakes. I will never dare to do this again in the future. Me for extra chapters. Old Master Mu closed his eyes in abysmal pain. He had known these people and interacted with them for so many years. How could he not have any feelings? Thus, he had given them many chances before. However, these people did not know how to repent, simply wasting the chances he had given them. How could he possibly forgive them again? All of you should just leave. Don't force me to the corner. Otherwise, I'm afraid that all of you would be unable to leave without any harm, and who knows, maybe the whole world would know that all of you were chased out the door by me. The old master opened his eyes and said heartlessly without leaving any room for negotiation. These people only thought about protecting themselves when they met with danger. If there was a next time, he dared not guarantee that he would not be stabbed in the back in Mu residence by these people just to ensure their own survival. Such an outcome was not something he could bear. Mu stood up from the ground, shaking. He understood, no matter how he begged, the old Master Mu would not possibly let him stay. Master, his voice was trembling. I really was doing everything in consideration of the Mu family. I did not want the Mu family to be utterly destroyed. Chapter 1263, The Truth v. Old Master Mu had his back facing Mu as he kept silent. Mu finally decided to stop begging. He faced Old Master Mu's back as he bowed deeply. I understand. I will take my grandson and leave the Mu family. Leaving this Mu family, a place that he had lived for so many years. It was no doubt that he was reluctant to leave. However, the old master's mind had been made up. No matter how he begged, it would not make a difference. He might as well leave himself the last shred of dignity and leave immediately without hesitation. As the other people saw how determined old Master Mu was, despair eventually appeared on their faces. They slowly rose and without saying any last words, they took a long, respectful look at Mu residence in which they had grown up. Then, they turned around and left without looking back. The sky turned quiet. Gu Shi brought those people Qin Li was leading away. What awaited them was a severe punishment. It was also the time old Master Mu thoroughly cleaned up the family next. Logically speaking, all these were matters related to the Mu family, and as an outsider, Nailan Yen naturally was not supposed to say anything. However, when she glanced past Chen Qinyan, she could not help but smile a little. Previously, when Elder Lei Yun returned to report to me, he had already mentioned about Mu Manor's young manor master's concubine. Seeing her today, I really don't know which part of her could be discussed on the same page as my in-law, to actually be able to charm the young master until he put her in the center of his world. Awkwardness appeared on Mu Ling's handsome face. He wanted to say a few words to defend himself, but he did not know where to begin and could only awkwardly stand by the side. Sui smiled calmly. It was not that Mu Ling's judgment was bad. It was just me who did not have much of an eye. I was actually unable to tell of their affair. All these years, the only thing I am grateful to Mu Ling for is that he had given me a son. She had long been able to approach the past openly. Otherwise, she would not have returned to the Mu family. White Phoenix nodded desperately. Exactly. Sui's judgment was not good in the past. However, I believe that Sui's judgment will definitely be extremely good in the future. For example, between her and Xiao Qing. Her judgment will forever be better than Mu Ling's. What kind of judgment did Mu Ling have? He wished to choose a daughter-in-law for Nan Xian with a one-track mind, but all the daughters-in-law he had chosen, had all become Feng Rookings. Oh, he had even recklessly tried to find Nan Xian quite a few concubines. However, all those concubines added up could not even measure up to a single Feng Rooking. He really did not know what kind of judgment he had. Could it be that he thought Nan Xian would listen to him? What a joke. Me for extra chapters. Sometimes Nan Xian did not even listen to Sui. Perhaps he was only willing to listen to Feng Rooking alone. White Phoenix suddenly felt that he needed to hug Feng Rooking's thigh. With this thigh, perhaps Nan Xian would really call him father in the future. Sui also liked Feng-Ruching a lot. If Feng-Ruching could put in a few good words for him, would Sui agree to help him give birth to a few little phoenixes? Hee hee. The more White Phoenix thought about it, the more elated he felt. He could not help but smile. Mu-Shi saw that the mighty forces had left, thus he turned around and wanted to run away whilst other people were not paying attention. Coincidentally, Feng-Ruching raised her head and saw Mu-Zai's departing figure. She randomly picked up a brick and threw it at him, and it hit squarely Mu-Zai's head with a thud. Mu-Zai's vision went black as he lost consciousness. Sierra! Chen Qingjian's heart-wrenching call rang in the sky as she crawled back up from the ground, quickly rushing over to Mu-Shi. She hugged his unconscious body with tears streaming down her face. If you want to deal with someone, then deal with me. Sierra is innocent. Feng-Ruching raised her brows as she looked down at Chen Qingyan, who was crying whilst holding Mu-Shi. Chapter 1264, The Truth 6. She raised her brow. Mu-Shi had teased me before. The moment she said this, everyone looked at Mu-Shi with murderous intent. White Phoenix was thoroughly enraged. Perhaps he could let it go and forget that Black Dragon had wanted to snatch away Xiao Qingqing, but this Mu-Shi, what on earth was he? He was just a scum. How dare he had such inappropriate intentions toward Xiao Qingqing? If Xiao Qingqing was snatched away, Nan Xian would definitely be in a fit of anger. Once Nan Xian got angry, then he could never be Nan Xian's father in this lifetime. Could it be that Mu Ling knew its intentions towards Sui and had purposely made Mu-Shi snatch Xiao Qingqing away to anger Nan Xian? The more White Phoenix thought about it, the more logical he felt that it was. In a fit of anger, he rushed toward Mu-Shi and snatched him from Chen Qingjian's arms. Instantly, he flew across the sky and ruthlessly threw Mu-Shi down from up high in the sky. If Mu-Zai's cultivation was strong enough, with this throw, he would be lightly injured at most. However, Mu-Shi was too useless. Even Mu Ling was disappointed in his innate talent. As such, when Mu-Shi fell from the sky, a huge pit formed when he touched the ground. He was so dead that he could not possibly be more dead. If one were to discuss this, it could be said that Mu-Shi could be considered lucky. Even his death was not painful. He was thrown to his death by White Phoenix when he was unconscious. Comparatively, Chen Qingyan and Mu Huan were not so fortunate. Mu Huan stared at the man in the pit in a daze. She clenched her fists so hard that her fingers were shivering. She hated Chen Qingjian's biasness. In order to support Mu-Shi, she had actually tricked her to go to Jia Xin's side. But Mu-Shi was ultimately still her biological younger brother. Seeing her younger brother die before her, Mu Huan was unable to look away. No! Mu Huan had only regained her senses when she heard a loud cry. She turned her head to look over and saw Chen Qingyan rushing over to kneel by the pit with tears of despair flowing down her face. Suddenly, Chen Qingyan raised her head and glared at Mu Ling with hatred, her eyes full of resentment. Me for extra chapters. Mu-Shi was your son, your biological son. How could you see him die right before you without doing anything? How could you? Chen Qingyan was not even so angry when Mu Huan was being tortured by the huge pot earlier on. Now that her beloved son had died, her greatest hope in life was also lost. Mu Ling remained stunned as he stared at Mu-Shi, who was lying at the bottom of the pit, and sorrow flashed in his eyes. This life, regardless of how many bad things he had done, he had still given the best to his children. Mu-Shi had been with him for so many years. To have so suddenly lost him and to say that he was not sad, was absolutely impossible. A human was not a plant. How could he not have feelings? It was just that Mu Ling did not say a word this time around, keeping his silence. Chen Qingyan laughed out loud. Her laughter was maniacal. Mu Ling, I can tell you something. The poison your mother suffered from back then was actually a poison I administered. Mu Ling shuddered. He looked at Qin Qingyan in shock and anger. What did you say? I heard my mother talking to your mother back then. My mother wanted us to be engaged at a young age, allowing me to marry you when I grew up. However, your mother rejected it. In the Mu family, I have always been living under charity. Those servants looked down on me as they felt that we were eating and drinking without contributing back to the Mu family, relying on your mother. So, since then, I swore I would not always have such days. I would turn things around. I wanted to make those who looked down on me to have to rely on my whims and fancies for survival in the future. Chapter 1265, The Truth 7. However, your mother, she rejected the idea. Rejected me growing up and marrying you. Back then, I was thinking, if she died. If she died, then there would be no one obstructing me from becoming the young lady of the Mu family. Too bad I was too young. I did not know how to tie up the loose ends well. I did not know how to get rid of the evidence, and your father finally managed to find some flaws. My mother knew that it was I who had poisoned your mother. She also knew that old Master Mu loved your mother a lot. My mother could not bear to let me die, so she accepted the punishment on my behalf. Ha ha ha, Mu Ling, you never would have known that the person who had given birth to your children and educated them was the enemy who had killed your mother. You took in your enemy who killed your mother as your concubine. You have greatly wronged the Mu family, ha ha ha. She had originally planned to keep this matter a secret for life. However, Xia was now dead. She had lost all hope in life. Now, she needed to make sure Mu Ling suffer and spend the rest of his life in guilt and regret. Mu Huan was dumbfounded as she looked at Qin Qingyan in a daze. She thought that she herself was already ruthless enough, but compared to Qin Qingyan, she finally understood how kind she actually was. It turned out that her mother was a person who would do anything in order to achieve her goals. Even to kill the people who stood in her way. However, did her mother ever think that if she confessed everything today, where would that leave her as her daughter at? Originally, perhaps her father would have let her off, seeing that she was related to him by blood. However, her mother had confessed to everything after she saw her brother die. And she became the daughter of the enemy who killed his mother. How would her father help her based on their blood relations? Her mother was pushing her onto the road of death. Mu Huan crumbled in utter despair. Her head was already knocked by the huge pot until she almost had a concussion, and now before she even got to recover, her thoughts also started to slowly become chaotic as she looked at Qin Qingyan in pure hatred. Even when she found out that Qin Qingyan had given her to Jia Axayan for Mu Zai's sake, she had not felt so much hatred toward her. Qin Qingyan. Mu Ling howled angrily before flashing before Qin Qingyan. He held onto her throat tightly, staring at her so angrily that his eyes looked like they were about to pop out and his eyes were bloodshot. You despicable person. Back then, how old was Qin Qingyan? At such a young age, how could she have used such ruthless methods? The funniest thing was that he had always thought that Qin Qingyan was innocent. Even when the old master had made things difficult for Qin Qingyan, he had protected her closely behind him. Back then, he had innocently thought that all the wrongdoings were committed by Qin Qingyan's mother and her mother had already died. Why was there a need to make things difficult for a young girl? Furthermore, how old was Qin Qingyan back then? She was still ignorant. Me for extra chapters. He had even believed that if Qin Qingyan knew that her mother was about to do something so ruthless, she would definitely have stopped her. But now, Qin Qingyan was telling him. All these were her doing when she was younger. And that her own mother was only a scapegoat. Ha ha ha. Mu Ling's laughter was heartbreaking. A bloody tear trickled out from the corner of his eye. Why did you tell me all these? Why? If he had not known these matters, perhaps he would feel sad, regretful and guilty. But he would never be this broken-hearted. He had loved for so many years the enemy who killed his mother. He allowed her to live in luxury, allowed her to bear his children and educate them, and even, repeatedly denied Sui's explanations for this woman. Until the point that he had even personally chased Sui away. Why? How good would it have been if Chen Qingyan had not said anything? She was already about to die. Why did she tell him all these just before her death? Enriching raised her hand and patted White Phoenix's head. Little Phoenix, all the best. I believe that you would be able to withstand the pain of being skinned alive and achieve your heart's desire. White Phoenix raised its head, startled by the sudden shower of affection. Did this mean Xiao Qingqing had agreed to let him become their father? With Xiao Qingqing's support, it felt that it would be able to marry Sui very soon and walk toward the pinnacle of life. Mu Ling was in a great rage and did not notice the interaction between Enriching and White Phoenix. He was solely focused on Chen Qingyan. Despicable person, I will allow your family of 3 to gather in hell shortly. Originally, he was still feeling sad over Mu Zai's death, but it was at this moment that he had found out such a cruel truth. The son and daughter of this enemy who had killed his mother, he did not want them in his life. Regardless of whether it was Mu Shi or Mu Huan. Mu Ling strangled Chen Qingyan. She was a little unable to breathe as blood flowed out from the corner of her lips. The cavity of her mouth was also filled with the copper taste of blood. However, a sneer still hung by her lips. Mu Ling, Nan Xi would never accept you back in this lifetime. Nan Xian would also never acknowledge you as his father. Old Master also does not want you as his son. You have abandoned your wife and son, betrayed everyone and left behind all your relatives for me, the enemy who killed your mother. Ha ha ha. This is the price you have to pay, all because of your own stupidity. Chapter 1267. The regretful Mu Ling. Apart from his wife and son, he was disowned by everyone and abandoned by his relatives. This was the price he had to pay for his own stupidity. Chen Qingyan's words were like thunder ringing, blasting into Mu Ling's ears. His whole body trembled badly as his eyes were full of fury. Chen Qingyan's neck was trapped in Mu Ling's hand. Blood was flowing from the corner of her lips, but her gaze was unyielding and without fear. Such a gaze was one that she had never had before. It also made Mu Ling even more furious. You want to fuel my anger so as to accompany your useless son sooner. Ridiculous. To let you die so easily, would that not be to your advantage? I, Mu Ling, will not make such a silly error. I will definitely let you pay 100 times of the price for your wrongdoings, and even 1,000 times. Mu Ling's eyes were bloodshot as they held resentment. Even if he bled dry Chen Qingyan and skinned her, it would be difficult to rid the anger burning in his heart. Chen Qingyan's body went stiff. Now, all she wanted was to die. Could it be that even this was noticed by Mu Ling? When had he become so smart? Seeing Mu Ling's bloodshot eyes, Chen Qingyan shut her mouth, not saying a word more. Her eyes were filled with sarcasm, like a thorn ruthless piercing into Mu Ling's heart. It was as if she was reminding him how he had stupidly treated the enemy who murdered his mother as his lover, loving her and pampering her for so many years. Despicable person. You despicable person who deserves death, I will cut you to death and flog your corpse. Mu Ling violently threw Chen Qingyan on the ground as he said angrily, I will also cut up Mu Zai's body, allowing all of you to meet again in the most mutilated forms. Chen Qingyan had indeed done countless evil misdeeds in her life. However, to her, Mu Shi was her inverse scale one. Therefore, after she had heard Mu Ling's words, a hint of panic flashed in her eyes as she went pale. Mu Shi is your son. No matter what you do to me, I will not mind it. However, you cannot let him die without peace." At this moment, even her body was trembling hard, as her eyes were full of trepidation. Perhaps Chen Qingyan would never understand how Mu Ling could be so cruel to such an extent that he would not even let off his own son's corpse. Mu Ling had also finally found Chen Qingyan's point of pain. The corner of his lips curled up into a cruel arc as he immediately pushed Chen Qingyan away, walking directly to the deep pit. Me for extra chapters. No. Chen Qingyan hurriedly pounced over and hugged Mu Ling's thigh. He is your son. The son whom you have loved for so many years. Your biological son. The person who did wrong was me. Mu Shi is innocent. From far away, Mu Huan saw how Chen Qingyan was protecting Mu Shi. She only felt chills throughout her body. She could not help but squat down and use her hands to hug her knees, burying her head between her knees. No matter what, her mother had always only thought of Mu Shi alone. And she, her daughter, was left forgotten. Thinking back about all the things that had happened over the years, the corner of Mu Huan's lips curled up into a sarcastic arc. She raised her pale, small face and looked at Chen Qingyan with cold eyes. Perhaps, since Chen Qingyan had confessed that her grandmother died due to her plots, their mother-daughter relationship had also ended. Since mother had never even cared about her and only cared about Mu Shi alone, then why did she have to bother being so stubborn? Compared to the desolation in Mu Huan's heart, the others only looked at Mu Ling coldly. 1. Inverse scale of a dragon is its sorest spot. If one were to touch it, the dragon would get angry and upset. Basically, it just means a point that should not be touched, and it also similar to an Achilles heel. Chapter 1268. The regretful Mu Ling too. If he had known that this day would come, then why did he do what he did? Even old Master Mu did not empathize with Mu Ling, not to mention the other people. Qinger. Si suddenly seemed to have thought of something as she turned to look at Feng Ruqing. As for Mu Ling and the rest, they were entirely forgotten. Why didn't Nan Xian return with you? Feng Ruqing's fingers stiffened a little. She only managed to slowly answer after a while. He is still waiting for me to meet him. I was just a little worried and thus, have returned to take a look. Since everything is fine here, I will return shortly to seek him. When she had left Fengshui mainland, Feng Ruqing promised Qiuqiu that she would return to pick her up. But when she did return to Fengshui mainland, there would no longer be someone jumping out in front of her, no one calling her master. Oh. Si really could not understand why Feng Ruqing had returned but Nan Xian had not. It was good that she did not bother thinking too much and simply nodded. All right. Then when you bring him back, then your wedding matters should be settled since my in-laws are here. She had been waiting to drink this daughter-in-law's cup of tea for too long. The day was finally here. Si turned to look at Mu Ling coldly. She kept calm as her expression remained unchanged. Mu Ling, just now Chen Qingyan has spoken a truthful sentence. Everything that you have reaped today is due to your own foolishness. It was you who has harmed yourself for a lifetime. You don't need to come to my son's engagement. Since you chose to believe her instead of me back then, you are no longer his father. Mu Ling froze as he stopped in his tracks to the pit. Chen Qingyan took this opportunity to jump on his back, taking out a sword from who knows where and violently stabbed at Mu Ling. At this moment, Mu Ling had yet to regain his senses due to Si's words and had completely not noticed Chen Qingyan who had attacked him. Behind him, everyone saw it, but yet no one warned him. With Chen Qingyan's abilities, she could not kill Mu Ling, but this attack was also something he deserved too. Splat! The sword stabbed into Mu Ling's body. Blood flowed from his back and slowly spread out. The intense pain also made him slowly regain his senses. He turned his head and stared at Chen Qingyan with his cold, unfeeling eyes. Chen Qingyan released her hand and took a few steps backward. Her face seemed to have been drained of blood as she bit on her lower lip tightly. It was you who has forced me to do this. You wanted to maim Sierra's corpse. I will not allow you to do that. Mu Ling raised his hand to hold the handle of the sword. With a strong pull, he pulled out the sword from his body. Blood spurted out like a fountain, unable to stop. With the sword in his hand, he narrowed in on Chen Qingyan. Me for extra chapters. Would you rather give up on your own and Mu Huan's life, or rather I grind the bones in Mu Zai's body into ashes? Chen Qingyan shivered. Her son was already dead. To her, it was also meaningless to continue living. However, she turned around to look at Mu Huan, who was sitting on the ground, and clenched her fists. Then, just kill me. You are not allowed to insult Sierra. Sierra was her most beloved child. He was already dead. She just wished for him to rest in peace, not needing to undergo any suffering. As for herself and Mu Huan, even if Mu Ling let them off, Feng Ruqing and Suyi would definitely not. Therefore, why should she not keep Sierra's body an intact corpse? Mu Huan had already known Chen Qingyan's choice, but when she personally heard these words, her heart still filled up with desolation. Both of them were Chen Qingyan's children, but her choice seemed to always be Mu Shi. Hee hee. Mu Huan stood up as she laughed softly. The more she laughed, the louder she became until her laughter became maniacal. 1. To drink one's daughter-in-law's cup of tea is one of the procedures in the Chinese wedding ceremony. Chapter 1269, The Regretful Mu Ling 3, Chen Qingyan, I hate you. Her eyes were bloodshot and her hatred was intense. However, I will not continue to be humiliated here with you. I cannot accept not being able to just die in peace. I just hope that I will no longer be your daughter in the next life. Before Chen Qingyan and the rest were able to react in time, Mu Huan had already quickly snatched a sword from the hand of a guard who was standing nearby. With a ripping sound, she had ruthlessly stabbed the sword through her own body. Blood bloomed from her chest like a flower as the corner of her lips lifted into a smile that contained relief. Back then, when she had first acknowledged Master Hai Rong as her master, Mother had instructed her more than once that she definitely needed to stay by Master Hai Rong's side forever. Only then would Mu Shi have a chance to fight in the Mu family, only then would there be a possibility of the old master acknowledging them in the future. It was as if her birth had been a mistake right from the start. However, she had always thought that her mother was just a little biased as Mu Shi was younger than her. She had never thought that her mother would actually trick her into selling her body for Mu Shi. Furthermore, she would never have guessed that Chen Qingyan would rather choose to leave Mu Zai's corpse intact than to actually care about her life. Pfft. She was a living person, yet she could not even compete against one who had left this world. Not knowing how. Just moments before she died, Mu Huan suddenly felt a little sense of admiration toward Feng Ruqing. At least, Feng Ruqing had the love of her biological parents, and a mother-in-law like Sui who loved her. Huaner. Seeing Mu Huan's eyes draining of life before her final breath, it was as if Chen Qingyan's heart was ruthlessly attacked. The blood on her face drained as she quickly ran over to Mu Huan. Huaner. She tightly hugged Mu Huan, whose body was covered in blood. Pain could be seen in her eyes. The corner of Mu Huan's lips tugged. If I were a boy and Mu Shi was a girl, would you have chosen to protect me instead? Chen Qingyan's heart shuddered. Mu Huan was her biological daughter. Even a ruthless tiger would not eat its own children, but she really had no choice. Mu Shi was her only son, she could not let him really die without peace. Me for extra chapters. Huaner, forgive me. I was forced into the corner. 2 trails of tears were streaming down Chen Qingjian's face. If you want someone to hate, then hate your father and Nan Sui. It is he who had pushed us to the brink of death. It is not I, your mother, who wishes to give up on you. Until the end, Chen Qingyan was still trying to push all the blame to someone else. She did not wish for her own daughter to carry her lifelong hatred toward her to hell. Mu Huan laughed sardonically. I only hate the fact that I am not a boy. Therefore, it was my fault to have allowed myself to be used by you, to have been abandoned by you. Seeing Mu Huan's eyes filled with hatred, Chen Qingjian's body trembled as she sadly lowered her gaze a little. Xie was a male. Regardless of how useless he was still her foundation. Mu Huan as the elder sister, sacrificing for him was something she should do. Therefore, she could not understand what exactly she did wrong, up to the point where Huaner hated her in the end. Under the morning light, Mu Huan bled more and more until the ground beneath her was dyed red. Her eyes slowly shut as she gradually lost her breath. This time, Mu Huan had made a wise choice. She understood that if she survived, what awaited her was definitely hell. Therefore, she might as well just die right away, lest she received punishment. Chen Qingyan obviously had also thought of this and took the advantage when Mu Ling was not paying attention. She drew out the sword from Mu Huan's chest and aimed it at her own heart, violently stabbing herself with it.